This is a HeadGum podcast.
Today's episode of the Black Girl Nerds podcast is brought to you in part by Flatiron School is focused on increasing awareness to coding education for women. They're pleased to offer Black Girl Nerds listeners free access to their online bootcamp prep course, plus $500 off your first month's tuition towards their online web developer program. Visit flatironschoolnerds.com. That's flatironschoolnerds.com to start your free course and take advantage of this discount. With a proven curriculum alongside a community of students finding purpose through programming, you can learn to code online, but not alone. Flatiron offers a job guarantee and comprehensive career coaching. Over 98% of grads accept job offers within 180 days of graduating. So visit flatironschoolnerds.com. Learn, love, code.
Confabulation is a new convention from the people who brought you 10 great years of WinCon. We're by the fans and for the fans, so there's no celebrity guests or long autograph lines. Just fan-run content about the things you want to talk about. Join us in Pittsburgh, May 25th through 28th, for a weekend of friends and fandom. Get more info at confabcon.com or our Twitter, Tumblr, or Facebook pages at confabcon. Hope to see you in Pittsburgh.
Hey there, this is Ava DuVernay, creator of Queen Sugar on OWN, and you're listening to the Black Girl Nerds podcast.
My name is Valissa Thompson, and I am the creator of the Disability2White hashtag and the founder of Ramp Your Voice. You are now listening to the Black Girl Nerds podcast.
Hi, my name is Divine Joy Randolph, and you are listening to the Black Girl Nerds podcast.
Hi, my name is Natalie McGriff, creator of the Adventures of Moxie McGriff comics, and you're listening to Black Girl Nerds podcast.
Hey, what's up? This is Morris Chestnut, and you're listening to the Black Girl Nerds podcast.
This is Emiasi Cornaldi, and you're listening to the Black Girl Nerds podcast.
Hey, what's going on? It's Soraya from Empire, and you're listening to the Black Girl Nerds podcast.
Hey, this is Jada Pinkett Smith, and you're listening to Black Girl Nerds podcast.
Yo, what's up? This is Sheo Hidari Coker, the showrunner and creator and executive producer of Marvel's Luke Cage. You're listening to the Black Girl Nerds podcast.
Five, 6, 7, 8. Holla boys and girls, it's the BGN. Coming from the Marvel world to the DC friends. All the way from Hollywood to the PCN. She defends everyone from sleazy men. Won't apologize for spitting Shonda rhymes. The space that we make is never colonized. Talking games and movies and actors. Better shake your booties for Black Girl Nerds. Better shake your booties for Black Girl Nerds. Yeah, better shake your booties for Black Girl Nerds. Ha. Better shake your booties for Black Girl Nerds. Better shake your booties for Black Girl Nerds.
Thanks for tuning into episode 104 of the Black Girl Nerds podcast. My name is Jamie, and I am your host. This episode is titled Vice Principals and Feeding Hannibal. 2 segments. In our first segment, we invite Kimberly Herbert Gregory. She talks about her role on Vice Principals, the representation of Black women in media, as well as using platforms that give us full agency as Black women. This is a one-on-one with Caron. In our second segment, we have an hour-long one-on-one interview with author Janice Poon. She talks about her book, Feeding Hannibal, a Connoisseur's Cookbook, which is a collection of easy-to-follow recipes that are inspired by the show. And she sits down on a one-on-one with Kyndal about how she uses food as a work of art. So that's our show. 2 great segments if you're a fan of TV shows like Vice Principals and Hannibal. You're definitely going to love this episode of the Black Girl Nerds podcast. Check us out on Twitter. Use the hashtag BGN podcast. Let us know what you think of these episodes of the show. Also, you can share us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and Google Play Music, and leave comments and give us a rating. All of those things do matter, and it lets us know how we're doing on the show. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. BGN 104, Vice Principals and Feeding Hannibal. Kimberly Herbert Gregory is an actress best known for her role as Dr. Belinda Brown in the HBO comedy series Vice Principals. Herbert Gregory has appeared in films such as I Think I Love My Wife, Red Hook Summer, White Alligator, The Genesis of Lincoln, and she guest starred on Gossip Girl, Law & Order, Grey's Anatomy, Private Practice, 2.5 Men, and The Big Bang Theory. In 2014, she had a reoccurring role as Lucinda Miller in the Lifetime comedy drama series Devious Maids. In 2016, Herbert Gregory starred as series regular Dr. Belinda Brown in the HBO comedy series Vice Principals.
Hey guys, this is Caron with the Black Girl Nerds podcast, and we have a very special guest today. I don't know if you've heard, but there's a new boss on the block. Her name is Kimberly Herbert Gregory, and she is the breakout star of HBO's Vice Principals. Kimberly, welcome to the Black Girl Nerds podcast.
Why, Caron, thank you so much for having me. The breakout star is quite generous, so I really appreciate you guys.
No, it's not. I just have to know, how is it that you found a way to get paid to act this much of a fool for a living?
I'm shocked still by some of the antics that we we did for that show. It was such a shock and a blessing that, we even stumbled upon this particular role. They sent the role out earlier in the year. They'd actually cast someone in it, and then they decided to recast, and we were fortunate enough to get in there. And I read with Danny. Jody was in the room, and, he and I just hit it off. And thankfully, we walked out of there with a good trio, I think.
I think that is the understatement of the year. Let me tell you, I did not know what to expect when I started watching this show. But when I tell you I have a very strange relationship with my very strange adult children, when I tell you we were in the floor, falling out, especially the first time you broke loose when he came for you. This show is incredible, but it's not without controversy, because there are a lot of things that make people extremely uncomfortable. And there's been some criticism. So what do you say to that criticism?
I think the criticism often reflects what I call people attempting to protect Black images in particular, because I'm assuming we're talking about probably the burning of the house and just the look of a woman of color being gunned for by two white men.
Absolutely.
So, I think those optics were interesting to me as a Black woman, and having been educated at all white institutions. It wasn't unfamiliar, nor did it seem untrue. Mm-hmm. So I also felt like it was a real opportunity for Black women. I just have to be honest that I feel like our strength is often made into a trope for a lot of reasons in media. And I just thought, what a great opportunity to play a woman who I felt was completely complicated, completely capable in her professional life, but is not holding it together in her personal life. Exactly. Yes. Exactly. So you get me right where I am. And so I thought, oftentimes we are only willing to see a Black woman be as strong and beat them all. It's sort of what I call the Rosa Parks syndrome. She's perfect. She has no problems. She's going to go in. She's going to save the day. And you know what? She's frying chicken by the time that's not Belinda. And I don't think that's many of us. And so although I felt like people kind of pushed back, I think it's because quite frankly, white viewers and white liberal viewers, and I'm painting with a very broad stroke. This is post 11/9. We just got to get down to the truth of a thing. We have no alternative facts for me today.
Okay.
So I think that was a pushback because people wanted to feel like they were on the right side. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, I can't support something that feels like it is racist or misogynistic. When we support those things in every show, every white male led show that we watch, and we're just not conscious of it. So I think by Danny and those writers and Rough House putting a Black woman in the middle, they really challenged us all, Black folks included, to say who has a right to fight and with whom. And I felt very capable as the character Belinda, as the artist Kimberly, to say, you don't have to protect me in this way. You don't have to protect her in that way. She can fight for herself. She can literally fight for herself.
Literally, she can fight for herself. Now, we celebrate our brilliance at Black Girl Nerds, and I want to say that I was really blown away when I really got to your real resume. You have a bachelor's in psychology and a master's in social work?
Yes, I do.
So you're one of us, is what you're saying.
I hope so. I hope so, Caron. I hope we're not meeting by chance.
You are one of us. We welcome you with open arms. And
why, thank you.
Dr. Belinda Brown and Vice Principals, you do deal head on with issues of race, misogyny, entitlement. But I think one of the most impressive things about the series is it confronts all of these things, the stuff that we talk about amongst one another. It puts it out in the open. And not only does it do that, but it allows us to laugh. And I think within the state that our country is in, with everything that we're dealing with race relations, with our government, with number 45, because I do not call him by name. Sometimes
I love that. I love that. I think relief. I'm going to take that, number 45. Okay, go ahead.
I do number 45, or I do lowercase letters.
I love it.
Yeah, that's my problem.
Rightfully so. Rightfully
so. So I did read somewhere that you are hoping to get behind the camera sometime soon.
I am. I know this of myself, and I think, Caron, why you probably do this podcast and why so many of us are looking at platforms that allow us to really have full agency with our image and our voices. I feel like there are stories to be told, particularly about Black women. And I'm not even going to be general and say women of color. I am specifically interested in the untold. And clearly, after seeing the piece Hidden Figures, the concerted effort to keep untold our historical relevance and how this country could not be what it is without us. Because my mother and I were talking about that after seeing Hidden Figures, and I know this may be a departure, but I think it speaks to why I want to be behind the camera. It's because if we hadn't gone to the moon, if this country hadn't gone to the moon, this country would not have beaten communism.
That's right.
Do you understand? It really changed the Cold War, and to know that was the doing of a Black woman.
It was.
That was several black women. Computers were their name, not just because they could compute, but because they were computers before we knew what a computer really was.
And corrected the errors of the computers when the system was in place. I love
and
that
corrected the errors, not just of the computers, but corrected the errors.
Corrected the errors
of everybody in there. So I think our specific, our nuanced, our hard, soft, loving, angry, empathetic, pathetic stories, we deserve to be heard and seen fully. And I would like to be a part of that. I think, Ava DuVernay has such a beautiful touch.
Yes.
She has inspired me to want to come forward in many different ways, to really say what it is we know to be true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, say what it is, like you said, we say to each other. Everybody needs to know it now. I mean, everybody just needs to know how fantastic we are. And because we're fantastic, that doesn't make other people less.
That's
But
right.
I also want I want people to know origin stories. Like the origin story of a beautiful curvy body did not start, in Calabasas, California. I love it. I think it's great, but I just need y'all to know that.
I need you to understand it wasn't surgically enhanced either.
I just need you to know that.
Naturally.
So
voluptuous in all of our glory.
All of it is beautiful. And then also like that level of victory and that level of defeat.
Yes.
And that's what I love about Belinda. It's like the defeat is real because unfortunately, and to our fortune, unfortunately, that's where we start to really harness and gather that ancestral blood memory strength.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, blood memory says, oh, I remember when you kicked me down that time, but I also remember when we got up. And I feel like Belinda does that. And I just like more stories. I like more images. I like for us to be, I want us to validate us and love us.
I so agree. There's only one thing I have to say, though. Dr. Belinda, she need to beat her kids.
I know! Listen!
Why don't she beat them? She needs to slap those boys.
Listen, Caron. This is what I have to say to you. I told Jody, I said, Jody, these kids wouldn't be in my house. That is the writing, and it served a greater story purpose.
Yes.
But I do not disagree. I told them every time we said cut, I said, y'all, he couldn't live here. Not now one of these could live up in here with me.
It's funny, but you watch it and it's funny, but you're sitting there saying to yourself, that wouldn't happen. Happen. You would not have another breath to take. It wouldn't happen.
It would have just been over day one. And you know what? And I agree, but I also love that her life is so unmanageable. And though it's a wreck. And though maybe you and I and our families, like in our personal nuclear families, would not raise children who had the audacity,
right?
Not even the audacity of hope, but just the audacity.
The unmitigated gall.
The unmitigated gall to open their mouths and speak in such a manner. I have gone to places and seen things where people who look like me and mothers who I thought would be like me have kids who are getting very close to that kind of behavior.
They push the limits.
Pushing. So as far-fetched as it seemed for Belinda and for Kimberly, and maybe more for Kimberly than for Belinda, I think there's a kernel of truth and a cautionary tale for all of us.
Absolutely. I will tell you, though, I don't forget you the one that took McDreamy to D.C. I have not forgotten.
What did you say?
I have not forgotten that you made McDreamy go to D.C. You took him away from there.
I'm sorry. You know what? We have Miss Shonda Rhimes to thank and bless for that. I had nothing to do with it.
We love her.
I mean, I was hoping that we would all have a shoot off where we were all in DC living happily ever after.
Well, you know what, Kimberly, you are the actress, you are the artist that we see in so many places, but couldn't necessarily put a name with a face. And now we have a beautiful face, a beautiful name, and a beautiful glory to carry it. So thank you so much for your time today.
Caron, it has been my honor and my gift. Thank you so much for having me.
Feeding Hannibal, a Connoisseur's Cookbook, is a collection of easy-to-follow recipes inspired by the show and created by its food stylist, Janice Poon. Each recipe is accompanied by a fascinating insider's anecdotes, delightful artwork, and revealing behind-the-scenes photos of stars and crew on the set of Hannibal.
Welcome to the Black Girl Nerds podcast. My name is Kyndal, and joining us today is Janice Poon. Janice is a Toronto-based food sculptor, painter, and writer. She served as the food stylist for NBC's dark and haunting series Hannibal, and is also the creator of Feeding Hannibal, a Connoisseur's Cookbook, featuring recipes, fascinating insiders' anecdotes, delightful artwork, and revealing behind-the-scenes photos of the stars and crew while on the Hannibal set. Welcome to the Black Girl Nerds podcast, Janice. Thank you for joining us.
Well, I'm so happy to be here.
So I think I'll have you start by just telling us a little bit about your background in food and art and just what led to your work on Hannibal.
Oh my goodness, it's such a long and winding road. And I always tell people that you can never ask me for career advice because it has been just such a winding, circuitous kind of career that I've had. I've always just sort of done what I like and what I enjoy and think, well, I'll get around to making money later. And it's actually true what they say about if you do what you love, you end up certainly making enough money out of it because you have so much fun in your life doing what you enjoy that you don't need to take that big break. You don't need. Somebody said to me the other day, well, when are you going? What do you think you're going to retire and take up a hobby? I said, what are you, crazy? Because I paint, I sculpt, I write. So if I retired, what would I be doing? All those things, but not get paid. I said, well, that's too sad. But anyway, I digress. You'll notice I do that a bit. I started out not ever wanting to be in food because I grew up in a family. We had several restaurants and a bunch of businesses that were food centric. And you notice right away that it's not. It's a business where you're working 24/7. We're always talking about food, thinking about food, handling food. It's all about food. And I thought, and our parents didn't want that either. They didn't really want us to be in food because it is such a hard career. So I said, no, well, I'm going to go to art school then. I'm going to, and I more to the point, I'm going to go to a commercial art school because I am not interested in starving in a garret, but life does what life wants, and here I am starving in a garret. But never mind. I took commercial art so that I could work in advertising. But then, of course, what they don't tell you when you're working when you go to school to learn advertising arts, they don't tell you, well, you have to be a sycophant to get along, and you're going to have to go along with cliches and things that my idea going into advertising was that, I'm going to change advertising, because I'm sick and tired of these, women standing beside refrigerators and pointing at things, or scantily clad chicks running around drinking, having beer poured on them and thinking that's, I'm going to put an end. I'm going to get into advertising. I'm going to change all that. And then, of course, about 3 weeks into it, I realized, you know what? Advertising is going to change me before I change advertising. So I got out of it and started doing artwork. And that somehow led to writing and sprinkled in that because I got involved in magazines. And that's how that went. I started designing magazines, and then I got involved with a food magazine. And then I got drawn into food styling because everybody is much more savvy about food and how advertising works. But back in the day, people had no idea that there was actually a job to go in and make food to be photographed or make food for people to eat on film. They just, they just sort of didn't think about it. It was just one of those sort of things like air that was there. But so I was shocked when I was an art director, and the food stylist walked in and started manipulating the food, and I thought, well, isn't that hilarious? I could do that, but of course I didn't until the opportunity arose, and then it just sort of rolled on and on and on, and that's how I became a food stylist. And then Hannibal phoned me. The Hannibal people phoned me when I was in the middle of rewriting a children's book, and I know, you know what, and you're a writer, so when you're staring at that blank page, when you're painting, you can dab stuff on and kind of then scrape it off and dab it. When you're writing, if you get going down a road, you'll be like 2,000 words into it before you realize, no, that's wrong.
Exactly.
Or worse, you're sitting there and nothing's coming to you. Like there's nothing. You just think. Partly, I think, because it was a rewrite. I was being asked to do the second rewrite because it was a different publisher, and I just thought, I don't want to rewrite this. I want you to publish it. I want you to give me the check. Anyway, and the phone rang, and it was somebody from my long distant past who knew somebody who knew that I was a food stylist. And they asked me if I would do this show called Hannibal. And I just wanted a break from writing. And I said, sure. And that was it. I disappeared down that rabbit hole for 5 years.
That sounds awesome. I mean, and it sounds like, obviously the work that you're doing, it's like the perfect marriage of all of the things that you love, like that blending of food and art together. What do you say to people who say that food isn't art or that it can't be art?
Everything is art. I say that to people all the time, regardless of whether it's a scarf or a brooch or a carrot or you have to put it down. You might as well put it someplace nice. Make your world beautiful. I think that's always been something that I've lived by. Something I learned from my mother is that beauty is everywhere. You just have to notice it. And you have to bring it out, because I think that beauty is what we all seek. It's sort of undefinable, but you know it when you see it. It's a certain balance, it's a certain movement, it's a certain sound, but it resonates. Somehow we all can agree on the calm that comes over us when we are in the presence of beauty. There's something about it. And food is no different from anything else. It can be made beautiful quite easily. You just have to, it's almost as if if you love it, it will be beautiful for you, because, you give it that love and it gives you beauty back. It's a bit abstract, but that's the way that's what I tell people. And then they look at me and shake their heads and wander off.
No, I absolutely agree, because I think, with everything, like you said, with, the way you dress, or just nature in general, I think everything, presentation is important. And I think that applies to food. And, you go somewhere and you sit down and you eat and you see how it's presented to you and how it's put together, and it just looks appetizing. It looks like you want to eat it.
It increases the enjoyment. I often tell people who think, well, I'm just going to throw it on the plate. I thought, well, you can throw it on the plate, but you can throw it on the plate with a flourish, or just add a garnish, or do something, because it's like wrapping a present. It's like telling the people that you're cooking for that I just said I wasn't going to swear, but I spent all fucking day making this. I want you to unwrap it. It is a present. It's putting a garnish on a dish is like putting a bow on a present. The real thing is inside, but it just makes the person stop and say, oh, look, this is something special. It says, slow down, enjoy this. It's going to be great.
So going off of that, where do you draw your inspiration from? If you're putting a plate together, you're putting a dish, an entree together, what do you pull from? What resources do you pull from? What inspires you?
I'd say just about everything inspires me. Literature inspires me a lot because so many of wonderful passages you read describe the food. It forces you to visualize it in your mind, and which is kind of a marvelous thing. It's almost better than actually seeing an actual thing because it becomes what you want. It becomes what you wish it is. When you're reading something, you think red flower in your mind. It's the most gorgeous red flower you can summon in your mind, and so that's the image you take with you. So I remember reading something in, of course I forgot the name of the book, Belly of Paris, of course, Zola's Belly of Paris, where the protagonist is walking down the street and he looks in the window and he sees the butcher display and it's horrible. He goes in, he says, "This is terrible." He says, "Let me do it." And he puts he builds up the sausages and then everything in a very beautiful display, and he's exclaiming about, the black, the rich black of this blood sausage is I could never get a black in my pigments so as gorgeous as this blood sausage. And it just pushes your mind to, great literature will push you to imagine things in your mind's eye, and that's a great source of inspiration. Of course, painting. Salvador Dali has been a wonderful inspiration because he's crazy. Mm-hmm. And, of course, Dali. Exactly. I mean, really, because I wouldn't normally think of putting a lobster on a telephone or making a dress out of bloodied crayfish but he's crazy. And so it's nice to dip your pen in that madness. And, of course, all the beautiful still life paintings the Dutch masters did, which were perfect for Hannibal because he's all about being slightly overdone, being slightly overripe and too much and overflowing and almost rotten and into that ostentatious. I would say as Hannibal, not that he's into that, but that he wants to point that out as a human failing. And so that was a device that I used in my work for Hannibal.
That's so awesome. And it's funny that you mentioned like the Dutch masters and things like that, because I know that you have your blog, which is also called Feeding Hannibal. And so I've read a few of your posts that you did while you were working on the show and just about different things like paintings and literature that you use to kind of blend your work together. And I thought that was so cool because I'm like, oh my God, like there's art and there's books and it's just everything that I love. And I actually went to Amsterdam last year.
Oh,
and
wonderful.
Yeah, my cousin and I went on a little girls' trip, and we had so much fun, so many museums, all of the art. I just love it. Rembrandt, Van Gogh, all of that stuff.
Fabulous stuff. Fabulous.
So
that's the great thing about traveling.
Yeah.
Because, we've got great galleries and museums here, but, you think, oh, I'll do that next week, or no, I'll do that next week. When you're traveling, you actually have the time to leisurely soak all this stuff in, and it's marvelous. Yeah. But all that stuff you can apply to everything. I mean, I think that all the arts and life itself all can be used as ingredients in a really beautiful dish.
Definitely. So speaking of Hannibal, first of all, that show was absolutely amazing. It was one of the most beautiful shows I have ever seen. Just the way that it's shot, and I love to eat. I absolutely love to eat. And the first thing that I noticed when I started watching Hannibal was the food.
Why,
So
thank
kudos
you.
to you.
Okay, second thing, right after maths.
Yes,
after
well,
maths,
after.
then the
Yeah. To be fair, yes.
I'm darling you, Nancy, of course.
But food is so crucial to the plot, the character development, and the suspense. What would you say was the most challenging dish that you had to design or prepare for the show?
I think that they were all challenging because at one point I was thinking, is this a game? Is this a cruel game they're playing? They're sitting around in the writer's room thinking, what can we do that is completely impossible? What can we put in the script that Janice will never be able to do? Of course, they're not thinking of me at all. I was being paranoid. But some of the things I just thought, this is impossible. But therein lies the fun of it all. Because the more difficult it is, then when you come out the other end and solve it, the more wonderful the job you feel about the job. It's like, wow, I did it. I didn't think I could, but I did. It's that challenge that keeps you so motivated to do better next time. Of course, and that's the other thing too, because everybody on Hannibal was doing such a great job. And everything looked so fantastic. And you'd bring your funny little stuff in to set, and the clothes would be spectacular, and the sets would be fantastic, and unimaginably gory prosthetics. And you'd think, well, I better step up my game here, or it's gonna fail. And I think probably to your question, though, the hardest one I had to do was the anchovy swimming in a Mobius strip in gelatin above a Russian aspic dish. The main thing we have to do with food in a film is it has to be edible, because the actors are going to eat it. And none of them, so it can't be too spicy, or it can't smell, and it can't do, there's so many other, then it has to be able to sit there for hours, and it has to not go bad because we don't want to kill anybody. But that was really, I thought, how am I going to get anchovies that are out of season to swim in a Mobius strip, which is an abstract shape? It's not a real shape.
Wow.
Oh my God. But I just had an epiphany, actually, when I was standing in the supermarket, in the tinfoil section, looking around, and my poor mind is spinning and waiting for something to lock. And I saw the thing that made it all work. These little liners that you're supposed to put in your stove, in your stove. And I thought, holy crow, I can cut those up and make them into Mobius strips and strap the fish on. But it was so difficult. It was really hard. It was hard. And suspending it all in gelatin, which isn't clear, even though everybody thinks it is. Oh, so that's a problem.
And how long did that take?
Well, I guess I'd usually had about 3 days to think about it, and a couple of days to do it.
So would they have like specific things in the script? You would get the script ahead of time. Would it say what they want the dish to be, or did you just have to kind of create on the fly? How did that work?
Well, sometimes they would say, like in the case of the Mobius strip, the anchovies swimming in formation in the Jell-O, that was in the script. Because believe me, I would never task myself with something like that. Plus anchovies, you know what? So smelly. They are just about the smelliest thing. And fish in particular, actors hate. Like everybody hates the smell of fish when it's been sitting on the set for, 3 hours, 2 hours.
Yeah, definitely.
So, so that was already it was impossible. But sometimes the scripts would say, Hannibal puts down a dish. which would be Yahoo! I get to do whatever I want. But, half the time, it would be sort of in the middle. Like Brian would send me an email. I've got a whole leg. What can we do? And it was always so much fun because he always sounded like a kid in a candy store. Oh, look, I've got a whole leg. He's such a delight. Delight is the wrong word. He was fantastic to work with because he just challenged everybody's creativity to the max, and we were all like a bunch of German shepherds. Like, do you like this? Do you like this? Do you like this? Just all wanting to please him so much because he's such a. I mean, the genius word is just used all over the place, but just he really is working on multiple levels of genius. And he's not one of those geniuses that says, like, I'm a genius and you're not. He's so open to, your ideas and then taking, like, some people will say, oh yeah, I'd like your ideas. And then they just like, ignore them but he was just like, oh, that's interesting. And then we could do that. Like, he'll take your ideas and fold them with his magic and then give it back to you and you think, well, yeah, that was pretty brilliant of me, wasn't it? So it just becomes, and then everybody's doing it, like, just being, to be in that creative milieu and knowing that the show was going to be so gorgeous and then wanting it to be more gorgeous every time. It was just such a treat.
Oh, I bet. And, when I was going through your cookbook, one of the best parts of it to me were the anecdotes that you put in there about working with Brian and just that whole aspect of what it was like to work with the team on the set. Because I think it just adds to just how, we see the show and we're like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. And then you're over here telling us like how you all made it as
or that it's like a train wreck.
Right.
Or that it's like it looks like it's going to be a train wreck, and somehow some miracle happens, and it all comes together. It's so ridiculous, some of the things that we have to do, and some of the things we do. So often you find yourself standing in the middle of like wherever, saying, what did I ever do to get here? Like, why am I here on my, hands and knees in an abattoir? Like, what? What's happening?
Oh man! And I think you said somewhere that Mads was so easy to work with because he would eat. Yeah,
he was hilarious. He's so funny. He's so easygoing. A lot of actors are. I wouldn't say it's difficult, but they stay in character. They sort of method. And so you kind of have to tiptoe around them a little bit. You don't know if are they acting or are they in I don't want to break their mood, or you have to be very, very careful. But with Mass, it was quips back and forth. It was very, lots of teasing, lots of ribbing, lots of camaraderie. And I mean, I think that's why we had so much fun, because it was such hard work. We worked so hard. But Hugh was just like a puppy, delightful. And Mads was just devilish and funny. And they were just so much fun to work with. And then you'd see them on the monitor and you'd think, oh my God, they're fantastic. They're these incredibly gifted actors, and we were just shooting the breeze and smoking in the alley like a couple of criminals, and then there they are with their incredible charisma and talent on the screen. It's just so interesting.
That's so awesome. I want to go back to your blog for a little bit, Feeding Hannibal. So one of my favorite entries on the blog, and also in the cookbook as well, is the one about the human leg. and the bed of coals and the ice that represents the lake of ice from Dante's Inferno. I mean, I opened the cookbook and I saw, first of all, the pictures are absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
But I saw that leg and like wrapped in what, banana leaves? Is that
Yes,
what it is?
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that human leg. That's not
That
a human leg.
like, well, that was really something because we didn't know it was going to be the last scene, but it was the last scene of the final episode of that year. And as Brian would always say, in TV series, every year can be, every year it has to be like a finale, because we don't know if we're going to get renewed. And so Brian sent me an email saying, I want this to be the most beautiful thing you ever made. Okay, no problem, Brian.
Easy, right?
Yeah, really, I think, could you just have, make it a bit lighter? Could we go like with like a contender for the best? But he said, I want this to be the absolute best thing you've ever done in your life. I go, oh, okay, no problem. And, of course you feel like after 3 years, you think, have I used up every idea I have for things you can do with the human body? And you think, oh God. And so I asked my brother, actually, I was, emailing at 3 o'clock in the morning. The only people who are up on the West Coast, right? So I'm like, I don't know what the hell to do. I need some food ideas. And he said, well, he was just in Hawaii. He says, how about a luau? I said, well, are you crazy? Luau, we're not in the suburbs, Al. We're not having a luau. Wait a second, though. It's perfect because it's a pit roasted thing. That's very Hannibal-esque. Slow because it's a leg. It still has to make sense from a culinary standpoint. And a leg is not tender. Even Bedelia's leg wouldn't be tender. And it had to be something slow cooked. So I didn't, it couldn't be a stew. It had to be the whole leg. And I thought, you know what? That is a really good idea. It's because you wrap it in leaves, you wrap it in mud, you bury it. But I thought, well, of course I can take, because I have a background as a florist. So, especially with bridal bouquets, people are doing all kinds of crazy things with those long tea leaves. And so that's what I used. I used those leaves because I think the food always has to be hot, because the main thing with food styling is that it's a long way from the plate to the actor's face. And that's where the camera is, on the actor's face. So you have to try to get your food up a little bit higher so it gets in the frame, and then maybe you'll get a close up. So this was going to work perfectly. And then because it was the last thing I wanted, and we wanted to be beautiful, I thought it has to have flowers. And if it's Hawaiian, it would have to have flowers. And I thought, well, flowers is too beautiful. It has to have something else too. So I thought, well, what's the most sort of romantic but hellish thing? And like, Beatrice and Dante and the rings of hell. Why not? I'm in it, so why not expound on it? And so I thought, okay, so that's fire and ice and all those things, and it all sort of came together that way.
I was so impressed by that. I looked at it and I said, wow. I was just floored. Just the whole aspect of that grand presentation. And by the way, I love the implementation of like food history and art history, both on the show and in the cookbook. How long did it take for you to create the cookbook?
Oh, it just seemed that it seems banal to say it, but the cookbook was just there waiting to be written down. So it had to, because I'd done a lot of the recipes, they just had to be tested, and I'd written the blog, so I had all that sort of idea of how to tell the stories of what I had. A lot of feedback from the Hannibals as to what stories they thought were fun and which ones were just plain old sad, because it's a lot of both. And so it probably took about 6 months to write it, and then another 2 months to do the photography, and another sort of few more months in there testing recipes and retesting recipes, and then you have to correct the galleys, and it takes a while. But it actually took longer to get all the signatures on the contract than it did to write the cookbook. Such is the way of the world.
I can believe that.
Yeah, because it's a network show, and then all the producers, and then all the actors. You have to make sure that, on and on and on. So that's but it's the kind of work that kind of, except for the proofreading, is the kind of work that kind of flies by, because it's telling a story. It's bringing life to an image that was formerly just in your head. So it's kind of was more fun than work. But.
And I love your the drawings that you have, the sketches, showing like the episodes and things like that.
Well, it's so funny, because those drawings are just working drawings, and usually that's what I always do for anything, really. If it's a ball gown, or if it's a floral arrangements, or if it's a dish, it's easier for everybody if I just draw it, because if I try to explain it in words, nobody's going to read the email, and nobody will even look at an email now, so it has to be really concise if you're going to send a text. So I found the easiest way is to do a sketch. But I noticed that when I sent the sketches out, because I had to get more input in the early days with this than I had on any other show I'd worked on as a food stylist. It was pretty much just a question of getting it signed off, and okay. But this one, people had questions, they wanted to know, and so I said, okay, well, is it colorful enough? Like, hello carrots, hello tomatoes, Okay, fine, I'll color it for you guys. And that's how those sketches evolved, because they're just my regular working sketches, but I put some color in it. And then I'm more shocked than anybody that people are interested in the sketches. But it became something that I learned from the blog that people liked, and we auctioned some off. Gillian Anderson who played Bedelia, of course, has a lot of charities that she does work with, and as does Brian. And I gave them sketches to auction for, and they went for 4 figures, which shocked me, because they're just, I've got files full of drawings if anybody would like to. But of course, it's because it's Hannibal, and because they're colored, and it's all part of it. It's all part of a work.
Yeah, and I also think that when it comes to art and artists, just creators in general, people love to know what's in the artist's head, or what's in the writer's head.
I guess so. I guess it's process, huh? People are interested in seeing the process. And but most of the time it's just me staring into middle space, which is not quite so interesting, or yelling at the shopper. Not that kind of corn, the other kind of corn.
Now, did you have to do a lot of research on food history? Is that something that you are just already knowledgeable about?
Oh, I've always been fascinated with food history, because I'm fascinated by food, and I'm fascinated with how people react to food, and how groups of people react to food, and how you can get, this is now just between you and me, if you've got any plans for the future for somebody, you can get anything you want with a well-made pie.
Oh, yes.
A well-made, especially an apple pie, or even a cheese pie, but usually a double crust, anything you want with a pie. Food is so interesting because I've so often wondered, like, why do we all have to rush out and get a turkey all at the same time? What is it about society? What is it about about gold food, about golden brown turkeys, about, these sort of festival foods? And because food has meant a lot to me in, I hesitate to call it literature, but when I was a kid reading children's books, of course, I would read about pink candy mice. Like, I wonder what those are like. And I would after I put down the book, and I would spend hours trying to make what I thought the pink candy mice were, or trying to make an imaginary world more real by making it and eating it. That sounds a bit weird, but then you start to think about human sacrifice or sacrificial lambs or all the things, or even I'm not Catholic, so I can't remember what it's called, but when you take the wafer, which is supposed to be which is communion, and for Catholics that is the flesh of. Is it the flesh of God? I'm sorry, Catholics. I don't know. But, the wine is the blood. Like, that's a form of cannibalism. Why, and so then why is it such a taboo? Like, I'm glad it's a taboo, but why is cannibalism such a taboo now when it didn't used to be? And, why do people have all these food rules? It's also fascinating. And I've always believed that a culture reveals itself through its food. So it's always been a natural interest for me. But that's the other thing I liked about Hannibal, is that it gave me a great excuse to do more reading on, these sorts of things, do more research on that, on, people's relationship with food, which is in itself a kind of murder, because you have to, in order to live, something has to die, whether it's a carrot or whether it's a cow. In living, there is always an implied death, except for plants, of course. Plants are the only thing that, but with animals, it's life and death. Every meal is life and death.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is your favorite food?
Oh my God, can't you tell I love it all?
Yes, I know it's hard. It's hard to
The next meal. That's my favorite one. The next meal. Yeah, no,
I start using that.
I'm terrible that way. I mean, in my mind now, of course, it's flooded with I love Peking duck. I love rice. I love rice pudding. I love black rice pudding. It's my favorite thing right now. My favorite snack right now is black rice pudding with coconut milk in it. But of course, I'll be sick of that in a couple of weeks, and my favorite thing is going to be, something else. But I love it all, and I'm so interested in I guess what you would call international food, because it's food of other cultures. I love exploring the food of other cultures because of the insight it gives you, and because it's new, and because you can always take something. It's new, but it's also common. There's always a common thread, and there's always that human thread that ties us all together. It's just so interesting. Food is just so interesting. Like Kentucky Fried Chicken has got to be the most universal dish.
You gotta love Kentucky Fried Chicken.
You
gotta love fried chicken.
It's funny, isn't it?
No, but that's so true. I mean, and anytime I'm traveling, that food is so important. I'm always like, oh, okay, I want to try like authentic dishes, because it's like you said earlier, your culture is reflected in the food that you eat. And I just think it's so great how different people from different walks of life can just come together at the dinner table and share this experience, because it is an experience.
It is an experience, yeah. It very much. It's an experience, and it's also a ritual, because there's a kind of a truce that you make when you sit down with people, and you're armed. You've got forks and knives. And it's just like we're just going to sit down. We're just going to have a break, We're just going to have a nice time. We're not going to think about who's in the Oval Office or that there's a war happening down the street. We're just going to have a moment of calm and enjoy each other's company and break bread together and trust that the person who cooked it isn't going to kill us. There's so much trust and so much sharing and exchange. It's a very intimate thing to do. And the other thing that I think is interesting about food, not that you asked me, but is that we eat in restaurants, that it's such a private thing, yet ritualistically we do it publicly. Why? Why? Anyway.
I never thought about that.
I know, it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you were sitting cheek by jowl, and you'll be sitting right next to a couple that's on their first date, and well, thank goodness, or what's the point of going to a restaurant if you can't eavesdrop on somebody? It's just, food is so fascinating. How it, when you're on speaking of first dates, when you're on a first date and it's so telling when you have dinner with somebody, the way they eat, the way they order, if they want to share what's on their plate, can you believe I've been out with people who are not the least bit interested in what's on my plate. They're not the least bit interested in letting me try what's on their plate. So rude.
Yeah, because I'm that person. I mean, especially if I know you, my friends and I, we do this thing. I'm like, okay, you order this, I order this.
Exactly.
And we're all going to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
New Orleans is one of my favorite places to go just for the food.
I love that.
And
food.
being in Houston, it's a hop, skip, and a jump. So we'll be like, I really want some beignets from Cafe Du Monde.
Don't tell me about fabulous deep fried things with all that icing sugar on them. Like, how bad can they be?
Yes, and the gumbo and the boudin. Oh, I know.
Champagne etouffee is one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
I used to make it. I went through a thing where I just made it every day in deep fried zucchini boat. Just so cut the zucchini in half and dig a little trench and bread it and deep fry it, and then you put the shrimp etouffee in it, and then you pretend there's a vegetable in there somewhere.
Right. I was looking for anything that's green, even if it's not a vegetable. I'm like, well, it's something green, so I'm good.
Yeah. Deep fried. Yeah.
So what advice would you give to people who are fans of the show? So for the fanables out there, but they might be a little intimidated by the recipes in the cookbook. Maybe they don't cook as often, or this may be the first time they even open up a cookbook. What kind of advice would you give to those people?
I would say just be strong. Just see it through. It's one step at a time. It's like when I'm painting a canvas, one brush stroke at a time. When you're walking, it's one step at a time. When you're cooking, it's one step at a time. Just focus on the thing that's in front of you, and whether it's 3 steps or 10 steps, don't worry, because when you get to the end, there it is. And it's not hard work if you love it, if you enjoy, and it is enjoyable. I think that everybody would say it's therapeutic, and the only part about that it isn't enjoyable is if you fear that it's not going to turn out. But when you know that at the end it's going to be yummy, you're going to get to eat it, you're going to want to share it, you're going to bring delight to the people you share it with. It's just a joy all the way through, except the dishes. That is another story. But never mind. The advice I would say is that give yourself time. You can split it up into several days, like get the ingredients one day, do some pre-prep, what we would call mise en place, like vegetable chopping and stuff like that, cutting things into, pre-prepping stuff so that you're not having to slam it all into one day. And just enjoy it and don't feel pressured to make it delicious, because it probably will be. And so don't sweat it. Just do it.
That's great advice. And sometimes even if it doesn't turn out right, that's okay too, because I know my friends and I, sometimes we'll get together and we'll cook something or we'll make a cake and then we take it out and then the cake falls.
But that's a cake. That's chocolate lava cake.
It's chocolate lava, and we're gonna eat it anyway. But
yeah,
it is kind of it's easier when you don't have to do it by yourself if you're not.
If
cooking isn't your thing,
Yeah.
Make
But cooking. Yeah, I think cooking. I just think cooking is everybody's thing. They just haven't found that métier. They just haven't found that one recipe, that gateway recipe that opens throws open the door and said, wow, that was like really easy breezy. And people were really knocked out by it. Like ossobuco is one of those dishes, like it couldn't get any easier, but people are stunned by it. And they just think, wow, this is delicious. It doesn't have to be made with veal shank, which is hideously expensive. It could be made with chicken. You just don't have to cook it as long. Like stuff like that. It's just you find a simple recipe with simple ingredients. That's the other thing, I guess. Start with the simple things, and I'd say take it from there. The other thing too is that cooking is much different from baking, and some people are natural cooks, and some people are natural bakers, because baking is more of a science. Like if you're a control freak, baking is great for you. And if you're like whatever, more free form and sort of, more jazz, then cooking is great for you because it's not science. There's no physics involved. Not much. There is, but not as much. Like with baking is an exact thing, whereas cooking has a lot of leeway with cooking. Yeah, I would say do small things for like don't invite a whole bunch of people over and try something new. That's a big mistake that people make. They think, oh, I'm going to try this really impressive dish. Just start cooking. Just start small.
I'm glad you mentioned that about the baking and the cooking because my best friend and I, we talk about that too because it takes two different sides of your brain, like you can just baking is like, okay, I know that I need half a cup of this, a teaspoon of this.
Yeah.
And it has to be just that and it'll come out right. Like cooking, you can kind of remix it a little bit.
Exactly. And you can actually make it into something else. Whereas it's a bit harder with baking. It's a little bit harder. Yeah. Yeah.
So switching gears just a little bit, we at Black Girl Nerds are very, very excited about the next project that you're working on, which
I
is American Gods.
I can't wait. I can't wait till you guys see American Gods. Oh my goodness. And of course you get a sneak preview. I don't know what you're going to see at I always say North by Northwest. It's South by Southeast, isn't it?
No, well,
no,
South
we have
by Southwest.
We have no. Which one are you going to?
South by Southwest.
South by Southwest. We have North by Northeast up here. So that's why it's okay.
I know that.
Directions are not my thing. Okay.
Well, I know North by Northwest because that's that Alfred Hitchcock movie.
Oh yeah,
right,
that's
with
right.
Cary
That's
Grant.
right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we will be there for the premiere of American Gods.
When you meet these gods, well, first of all, hello. When you meet Shadow.
Hello.
I mean, hello. I mean, talk about tears to my eyes. The guy, we'll have to talk about this later.
Right, off the record.
Honestly, what because when we're working, we're just watching everything on the monitors. But sometimes you just have to stop and let your jaw slack a bit and drool.
Oh my God.
He is, or just not, or not even on the monitor. Just like when he comes over, say, "Oh, do you have any what's to eat?" Like,
like stops your breath. Like, wait, what?
But there are so many, and of course, Gillian Anderson is in again. She's fabulous. But my favorite character has got to be. He's a leprechaun. I never thought in all my wildest imaginings that I would be enamored of a leprechaun. But the guy who plays of course I forgot his name now, but he's just so funny. The role is so funny. All the characters are so interesting because they're gods, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're willful and they're powerful and they're crazy, and they're a little bit mad because they're not getting quite what they want at the time when we meet them, and and of course Ian McShane is just lying constantly. Like everybody, the gods are bad. They're just bad, devilish people, or rather characters. And it's just so much fun. They get into so much trouble. They create so much trouble, and with such kind of explosive results. There's a lot in that series to get your teeth into.
Definitely.
And much more food than I thought there was going to be. I thought, there'll be the odd burnt offering, but those gods can party on down. They can really put on a spread, and there were a lot of challenging things in that too. I'm gearing up to blog about that too. So.
Yay! So you're gonna have your own
There's not food in every episode, but I'm wondering because a really dear friend of mine that I've known before either of us were in the film industry, we were friends, and she does hair, and she's on American Gods doing the hair. So I thought, well, I wonder if we should do a tandem blog because. She was there like all the time, whereas I was only there when there was food, and there wasn't food for every episode. So I think I'm going to try to see if I can bring that to my Feeding Hannibal blog. I guess I'm still going to call it Feeding Hannibal because I'm a Hannibal girl. What can I say? As much as I love American Gods. We'll see once it starts airing. But Hannibal will always be, there'll always be Hannibal. And so I might have to change who knows, I might have to change my Twitter handle to American Gods, Feeding American Gods at Feeding Hannibal. I don't know. No.
We'll save those sketches. I mean, if you're doing the drawings and stuff, save all of that because you never know, there could be another cookbook in the future.
Well, there could be. Not. Who knows? I was actually talking to my publisher about it. They were very keen about it, and I said there isn't much food, but there's so much lore, and it's all intertwined. So who knows? It could be a folkloric cookbook or a combination thereof. Yeah.
I just got so excited about that. I love Neil Gaiman. I'm a huge fan of his work. I love that book.
Yeah.
American Gods. It's such a great book to read.
So many wonderful characterizations. Yeah.
Yes, and just the way that he's able to tell a story. I mean, he's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, he really is. He really is. I've enjoyed so much of his work, but American Gods especially is so meaty. There's so much in it. There's so much in it, yeah. And Shadow's wife is fantastic. She's hilarious. I know she dies. She doesn't die as soon as you think she might. I probably shouldn't tell you that.
Spoiler alert.
She's going to die. Like, I don't know if you think she's going to die right away or before right away or after right away. But she's just wonderful.
We'll see some twists.
You'll see some twists because it's Brian Fuller. And, Neil Gaiman has had, his eye on everything. And he's loved everything. So Brian has made his, I wouldn't say changes, but they're He's morphed some of the storyline, and all to Neil's approval. Actually, I think one of the things, we have a new character that wasn't in the book that Neil was in on creating to further tell the story. So there's that to look forward to.
Oh, so much.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, please tell Brian, Ian, Neil, Ricky, tell everybody that we at Black Girl Nerds are super excited for this. We would love to have them on the podcast as well.
Yeah.
So,
you know what? Yeah, I'll send a note to Brian.
Yes, please do that. We would love to talk to them about their work, because we're super fans over here.
Yeah. And well, everybody, we know what, when everybody sees it, they are all going to be super fans too.
Yes.
It's going to be really something. It's a new thing. It's new because it's not word for word. It's not exactly the same. The timelines are a little bit different.
And that's okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Because
I think we all, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think we all see something different. I mean, my version, what I think American Gods is different from what you think American Gods is different from what Brian Fuller and Michael Green thinks American Gods is. So it's different from what Neil Gaiman thinks American Gods is. So we all have our version, and it's just going to be delightful to see this new one.
Yes, and you have to make some adjustments for television anyway, and
of course, it's a different medium.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, yay! All excited about that. So, Janice, tell us where we can find you on social media.
Well, if I knew that I could go with like 2 hours sleep, I'd do more Facebook. Right now, I won't be starting my blog up until August, or rather till April, when American Gods starts airing. But I'm on Twitter. Even though right now it's all about Trump, I do manage to tweet a little. Well, we're having a little bit of fun with it right now because Trudeau's there. So up in Canada, we're kind of having fun with
oh, that's right.
Trudeau, and how he's handling the shenanigans at the White House. So, but other than that, normally American Gods and Hannibal filled timeline is now 80% Trump.
And your Twitter handle is?
Oh, it's Feeding Hannibal. It's at Janice Poon at Feeding Hannibal. Yeah, at Feeding Hannibal.
Do you have an Instagram account?
I don't. Weirdly, I can't seem to get it together. I know it's so easy just to. You can link your tweets on Instagram so easily. I know that, but I know it's, you know what, you have to be ready to Instagram. I think I'm never ready to tweet. It just does. It's like tripping and falling into a black hole. When I tweet, it's because I tripped and fell into a black hole. It's not because I said, well, between the hours of 8 and 9:15, I'm going to tweet. I was like, no, I'm never going to tweet. It's just something like I see something, I go, what? And with my rabbit brain, what? I can't let that go. I have to tweet about that or not, silly, but fun.
Yeah, I'm just envisioning what your Instagram account could possibly look like, just with all the pictures and the food. I can just see it now.
It's terrible because one thing is I can see that I can see I have an addictive personality, or I don't know what's wrong with me, but I like to I really do like to get into things, and I think I'm not allowed to do any social media on my phone. That's my rule, because otherwise,
good rule.
There would be I would have no life. I would just it'd be all up in my phone all day long. I can't. And that is wrong. That's just wrong. So I have to say, only when you're at your desktop. That's when you can do social media. So like if my phone is like in another room or whatever, so any photos that I've taken thinking I'll tweet this later, I never do. Like I just saw a magnificent art exhibit. Like, I'm going to tweet this thing. Like 2.5 weeks later, oh, what was that? When was that thing? So I can't, until I learn to discipline myself better or find, some way, like a Fitbit that punishes me if if I'm on too long. Until then, I will not be Instagramming because the phone is off limits for social media for me. So for now, it's Janice Poon at Feeding Hannibal on Twitter. That's me.
Well, that's fair enough. Janice, I had so much fun talking to you. I feel like we have so much in common.
Yeah. You must come over for a meal or 5.
Yes. Well,
yeah, we'll make gumbo.
Oh my. Okay. I'm doing it.
Okay.
We're doing it for real.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you for asking me. It's been so much fun.
All right. Thank you.
The Black Girl Nerds podcast is produced by Jamie Broadnax. Various episodes are edited by Jamie Broadnax, M.R. Daniel, and John Bauer. The opening theme song to our show is written and performed by Samus. Various instrumentals are performed by Samus, Sky Blue, and Shubzilla. You can find episodes of the Black Girl Nerds podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Spreaker, and Spotify.
That was a HeadGum podcast.